Super. Okay, well, shall we then, with that running, shall we think about starting up this small group activity? So yeah, I said at the outset, hopefully you will have received that email from Vishant with a document just encouraging some thinking in advance on a couple of points. Some of the things that I'd suggested you maybe would think about was a kind of a success, a piece of good practice in the area of increasing physical activity in the healthcare workforce, perhaps something you've done in your trust, maybe small, maybe large, but something that just worked well, got some good feedback, and that would be useful to sort of share with others in the network. Or alternatively, the other side, perhaps you've faced some challenges trying to encourage activity or get people moving more, and talking about that in this setting could be useful. We've got a lot of expertise on the call about physical activity and getting people moving and being more active in the workforce. So if there are challenges you faced, it may be useful just to kind of talk about that. What was difficult? What proved tricky? Are there things that we across the network could do to support that? Ideas that people might have on the call to help resolve some of those challenges. Or similarly, perhaps you haven't really started doing anything in this space yet. Maybe you're keen in the trust to do more, but haven't really sort of tried any formal initiatives yet. And again, this is a great opportunity to just hear from others about general points of advice, or perhaps you've got an idea of something you'd like to get off the ground and you'd like a chance to sort of bounce that around with people and get some feedback on it. Then again, this would be a useful space to do that. So yeah, these are the sorts of things we'd suggested as kind of thinking about, and really ultimately this is about sort of trying to really build on the potential of this network to share best practice, to learn from each other, to really encourage good work in this area and getting staff physically active and moving more. So I'm proposing we have about 30 minutes. Probably what I'll do is I'll be kind of checking in a little bit with the small groups across that time to see how we're doing. And actually, if that feels too long, then maybe we'll end it a little sooner. But I've earmarked about half an hour to discuss these points. Obviously, like I said at the start, take a few moments at the beginning just to kind of introduce yourself to the group, say a bit about your trust, get to know the people in the group that you're going to be working with. And then talk through some of those examples. If people have got 1, 2 or more examples from that proposed list, then just have a chat through those, hear a bit about each other's practice, maybe make some suggestions with each other, and hopefully that will kind of prompt some useful discussion on this. If possible, what I'm also hoping is that you can nominate one group member just to sort of briefly summarize what you discuss in writing. Doesn't need to be in any way polished, bullet points fine, or just one kind of summary paragraph. But if you could get something down, a few lines down in writing, that would be really helpful just to kind of capture the essence of what you discussed. I'll ask people to pop that in the chat, and then what I will do afterwards is I'll pull all of those together and kind of try and put a document, a 1-pager or a 2-pager together that reflects our experience across the groups, and I can then share that back with everybody as a bit of a document for things that have worked well, challenges, suggestions, and so on. So hopefully that sounds all right and clear. I will pop the kind of prompts into the chat as well, just so that people have got those to hand. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions before we make those groups? Sound okay? Okay. Interestingly, the breakout groups option has disappeared from my team. That's bizarre. I checked this in advance, but now I can't see the breakout groups option. That's very strange. Am I missing anything there? Oh, bizarre. Right. Okay. I'm gonna.
Is it because you're recording, possibly?
Oh, I wonder. Yeah, but maybe. Let me just see that then, because yeah, I checked this a couple of days ago, and I had an option there for breakout groups. I'm going to stop the record.
And so I can't sort of tell you completely how it's gone, but I've been taking part in it, and everybody has to log their activity for the week, number of steps, maybe how much running or swimming or whatever physical activity you've done. And then as a team, like it gets logged, and it's one of those sort of around the world challenges. So we're seeing how far we can go. I think we got to Paris at one stage. I don't know where we're heading as a team. We hopefully get further than that. I think then there'll be a winner whoever's sort of travelled the furthest distance over the 4 weeks. I think that's quite good that you can do your activity in your own time. Obviously, NHS staff, very busy, and you might be in your shift that you can't do, join in an organised activity, but you can do your activity in your own time. But there's a bit of a push between you to, get you to do more activity in the week. You've got to record it at the end of the week. And one thing that's been nice, we've been a Teams channel group about it, and people have been posting lovely pictures of their countryside walks and
nice.
Their dogs and whatever they're doing with walking a dog, etc. So it's a nice sort of community social little bit element, finding out what people are going up to in the week as well. So we haven't got a sort of full results or how many people have taken part, but I just thought I'd say that's something we've been doing, which I think has been good activity.
Great, thanks, Annabelle. That sounds great, and sort of harnessing some of the, like you say, the kind of interpersonal, getting people to feel like you're doing something together, and there's kind of motivational aspects from that, isn't there, as you're suggesting. And you don't know really the full reach of how many it's got, but I guess if you've got a bit of a set, it sounds like there are multiple people commenting and posting things, so it's getting to a few people at the very least, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's quite a few teams taking part. So and I've personally found it useful for motivation, and it's been good.
Great. And I noticed, I know you said that you were sort of recording how much you're doing. Is that sort of like you at the end of the week, you're estimating that, you're describing how far you've walked, or have you got people, has everybody got sort of like a Fitbit or something like that measuring their step count?
So I think some people are just estimating. I've got like a pedometer on my phone, so it tells me how many steps I've done. And then for the other activity, you can just say, well, I've done a 30-minute swim, and somehow the team organizer, I think, converts that into miles or something, or it goes into a calculator. So you can just say, and I've played tennis for 45 minutes or whatever, and then that converts into miles.
Great. That sounds great. Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that. That sounds really interesting. I can see Bernadette, you've got a hand up as well. Thanks.
Oh, right. Sorry, I'll put my camera on, but just the network's playing up a wee bit. Joe, don't worry about the rooms. I do feel for you. There's nothing worse than a bit of an IT meltdown to kind of make you go, oh, Jesus.
You think you're prepped, and then it all falls apart.
Never mind. We're all a good gang. So Annabelle, really loved what you were saying about it. It's that kind of like sense of connection and those activities, and kind of looking at how we develop that sense of community and belonging. We're at the Minutes Amaze Walking Month, and it's always a bit of a tricky thing whenever you're hanging your hat in campaigns, isn't it? You feel always this tokenistic, or what work can we do meaningful work? We've utilised the Walking Month and had a really nice collaboration with Mercy Care's our charity. Sorry, my name's Bernadette McGrath. I'm Workforce Wellbeing Manager at Mercy Care NHS Foundation Trust. We've got about 11,600 staff. We work right across the Liverpool City region. We've got about 250 sites, 600 teams. So it's quite, I'm always jealous of like our NHS colleagues that have like, a few kind of solid sites. So it's can be quite challenging, but we've just addressed that with creating site walking maps with our sustainability team, and just mapping out areas where people work. I think we've got about 16 maps. We've just refreshed them for National Walking Month and added in just, we've got the step count, the distance, but also like some grounding and mindfulness techniques, and pointing to our wellbeing offer as well. So they can be digital, or people can kind of print them out, because we found that digital exclusion can be a bit of an issue across our trust. So we're addressing that. And then people can sign up to walking teams during May, and then the money raised will go into Mercy Cares, which will then feed into like further staff wellbeing funds. These walking maps are available throughout the year. We work with our community of wellbeing advocates. We've got about 280, and we get them to model like we had a team huddle, but we did it outside, and we went for a walk and talk, things like that. Sometimes it won't always be possible. with our trust, we have colleagues that work in secure settings that may not be able to go outside, for example. So I think we work for really kind of like varied picture. So it's always a real challenge about how to keep that creativity in and make it right for the teams that we're working in, because we know there's no one size fits all. We do our wee 10-minute movers online, which really supports our colleagues that work from home. We have varying degrees of people kind of plugging in. What we find is recently we've kind of shifted our tone and going, do you and your team want to do something together? So picking up on what you were saying, Annabelle, about, you know, just doing something collectively and not just the individual. Definitely, I know we'll come across this in the second part about barriers. It's time. People say, I don't have time to go for a wee, let alone anything else. And that in itself is a real issue, but we're really trying to shift the narratives and looking at what we need to create positive wellbeing cultures. I don't know if people are doing anything for World Wellbeing Week. The theme is workplace, but we're trying to utilize that to get some senior leadership messaging around what our approach will be to wellbeing cultures and kind of setting stronger messages in that. We'll see how that goes, but we find the small practical pieces of work are really useful, but challenging with kind of like understaffed areas and people feeling that real system pressure as well. The final point is we're linking in with our place-based partners, our public health colleagues and local authorities, and looking at how we can utilise those community assets across all the patches we work, and that's been really useful conversations to have to support our work.
Great, thanks so much, Bernadette. There's some really useful things there. It sounds like yeah, you're doing some good work, and I think there are a couple of things that you've mentioned and that, like you've pointed out, relate to what Annabelle was saying that are kind of really important in this area, aren't they? The challenge of time and being, you know, finding ways to promote this in a way that, you know, in a context where people are already so stretched, so worked, so little spare time. And I think a couple of the things that you mentioned there and that Annabelle was saying about doing that then in ways that are encouraging kind of smaller, regular bouts of activity rather than a sort of a longer scheduled one at a set time, that sort of feels important. And yeah, the kind of interpersonal part of it really came through in what you were saying there again, as well, isn't it? I think if you can do that in a way that, as well as getting people moving, also helps them feel a bit more connected, or is just provides a bit of social space, then that's really helpful, isn't it? So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I've jotted a few things down as you were talking. I can see Emma as well. You've got a hand up.
Yeah, hi, I'm Emma. I'm the Wellbeing Transformation Lead at London Northwest University Hospital. So we're an acute trust. We've got 3 main sites and a few community sites as well. I think what you were saying about that kind of collective mindset and things is really interesting. We've had a project in collaboration with some other trusts using a digital platform for micro exercises. So anything from 2 to 8 minutes, and there's kind of quite dynamic fun ones. There's kind of stretching, you know, they're called sort of, you know, computer neck, computer back, things like that. And there's also kind of like breath work, reflective exercises as well. And the company that we're working with had used it primarily in sort of more corporate spaces beforehand, and we're kind of the first healthcare areas they've branched out to. We've really struggled with uptake and adoption in terms of like raw numbers. However, the people that have used it have really enjoyed it. And I think the mixed bag of needs between our different workforce profiles has been probably what the big challenge is. You know, we have people who are working from home, who are more based in offices, who have regular team meetings that everyone attends, and they're able to adopt it as part of BAU in their, you know, first thing in their weekly team meeting or in their catch up at lunchtime, things like that. And that works really well, and it's feeding into that rather than, oh, sit all day and then go and do exercise. Can we build in these little pauses, you know, 2 to 5 minutes? That's been really helpful. And a lot of the research the company came to us with that they'd done previously showed that where you got teams on board and there was that kind of social contract with your colleagues, that was much more effective. So actually, as we shift into the second phase, that's what we're going to try and sort of focus on a bit more, is having teams that can sign up and commit to doing it a certain number of times per week rather than just sort of throwing it and seeing what sticks. So I think that kind of echoes that. And if you can tap into that like competitive element, I think that's really interesting. Where that it hasn't worked, and I can fully understand why, is definitely a lot more in our kind of clinical teams, like particularly frontline colleagues, and I think we've probably got a different challenge there, because these aren't the people that are sitting down all day. They might be moving around all day, but they're maybe the people that aren't doing kind of strength training or those things that we know are really protective factors as we get a bit older, and particularly thinking, we've done a lot of work in our chest about menopause, and that's a real hot topic. So, and we launched a lifestyle program recently, kind of looking at staff who've had high cardio metabolic risk factors, and wanted to make a change. And obviously one aspect of that lifestyle package we looked at was activity levels. And I think people responded with what they were already doing. Some people were doing some physical activity, some people weren't really doing anything, but barely anyone was doing any strength training. So I think that was quite interesting, and we've tried to put on some additional classes, particularly for those people who maybe weren't used to exercising, felt uncomfortable going into like a group exercise space, kind of off a background of nothing. And the people that could attend have really enjoyed that. But again, we run into the challenges of cross-site working, shift timings, outside responsibilities of running something at a specific time. So I think it's really challenging, isn't it? Because then you sit there and you look at the numbers and you go, well, actually, of our whole workforce, X% of people have only participated in this one thing. But actually, as we say, one size doesn't fit all. So actually, we do need to have a slightly tailored option. But I think proving impact and efficacy of that is another challenge.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. That's really, really useful. And yeah, I guess you're kind of highlighting some of the real challenges of work in this area, isn't it? Of making of things that are useful and effective, but also that are actually implementable and feasible in the context of so many different job roles. I suppose we're talking about healthcare workers, and as you're kind of alluding to, there are lots of different types with different demands and different working schedules, and the ability to do any of the things you're describing is obviously influenced quite significantly, isn't it, by the nature of your job and what, the hours and the demands of where you're supposed to be at what time and so on. So yeah, I guess I'm taking from that a couple of things, perhaps partly around the importance of kind of multiple options and things that sort of recognize that diversity and that try and therefore put things together that, not everything's going to work for everyone, but if there are a few things on the table, you've got a better chance of kind of reaching people more broadly. Thanks, Emma. Kaylee, I think you had a hand up, didn't you? Would you still like to come on?
Yeah, it was just going off what Emma was talking about as well. So us as a trust, we offer something internally, midday moves, which is very similar to kind of what you were talking about, where we have 5 minutes of movement at midday. We kind of deliver that, but it's a calendar invite, so it is tailored more so towards the desk-based or anything more so activities. So it comes up as a calendar invite, and it's a desk-based movement stretch kind of activity every day, well, Monday to Friday, which we deliver. We had a really good kind of case study kind of come out of it, where we went into the workspace and they had a quite high percentage of sickness rate, and it was like, how can we work with you to reduce that, really? And we went in, and it was in the manufacturing hub, and they kind of said the same, we don't get a break to even have a wee type thing. And our advice would be, you need a break. You need to step away from your desk. So we kind of advised, they're in a big workspace, so to create a little walking space around so they can get up and move. And actually off the back of that, they do midday moves as a team. They put it as a projector. They're in kind of a big manufacturing hub, put it as a projector, and they've fully got on board. They've got headbands and everything. It's the highlight of the day. And they, as a team, do it. So it just makes it a little bit more fun. They're the only ones that do it with the cameras on as well, which is lovely to actually see that. But we kind of, that was just off us going in, and it was kind of trying to get their managers on board to say, if you give them 5 minutes, you will get so much more out of it as well. And actually it's like proof in the pudding, like they're really enjoying it, they're more energized sitting back down, and they've been a really good team to kind of go, look, it does work, kind of thing. And when that happens, I feel like you can prove your point and implement it elsewhere. So we kind of have that up and running Monday to Friday, and a different person takes it Monday to Friday, so you get something different every day. It's just a bit of a mixture. It can be something really cheesy one day and then something structured the next day. So it's something similar that we're doing over at Northumbria.
Super, that sounds great. Thanks for sharing that. I can just sort of imagine that, and you can. I think I can also get the sense from the way you're talking about it of how, yeah, 5 minutes is not a long period of time, is it? But also that 5 minutes of doing that is enough. People sort of when they are fully on board with it in that kind of way and just throwing themselves into it. That is genuinely energizing, isn't it? And it is the sort of thing that will kind of brings people together in a certain way as well, doesn't it? That sense of letting your guard down a little bit around each other and just going for it. It sounds like a great piece of work.
They all have a laugh with it as well. So it kind of takes that, all right, we're not at work for 5 minutes type, and they are in a role where they are kind of under pressure to kind of get stuff done within a time frame. And I think that was getting a bit heavy on them. And we were just like, if you can give them 5 minutes, you'll get so much more out of it. And actually, it's really worked with this team. And 5 minutes, do you know?
Yeah, that's great. And I guess that something in I think what everyone has said so far also kind of comes back around to that point around the sort of organizational support or buy-in and the maybe to some extent the challenges of that, but also the kind of potential for that. If you can get people on board to sort of really buy into these things and encourage people to take part, then that can be a big thing about getting people going. That's the sort of a sense I've taken from what you've said there. Emma, were you gonna come on that point?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think it just shows if you got the right people and you can get them really engaged there, that team dynamic really works. I think it's been interesting because in our trust, our leadership at an exec level are on board and they're very happy. Of course, people can have 2 to 3 minute, 5 minute break to do some exercise, and we find sometimes the resistance comes like on the ground, and people are going, yeah, but I just need to do this first, and yeah, but I just need to do that first. And it's really interesting. I think there's something about that. I don't want to say it's just clinical staff, but that we've all come across it before, healthcare hero martyrdom, something about I come last in the list of priorities. And it's really hard to convince people that giving yourself 3 minutes is so worth it. So it's interesting. Sometimes it's like trying to convince the leaders, and sometimes it's the people you're trying to help, isn't it?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Perhaps speaks to the kind of cultural sort of, as somebody mentioned, maybe it was Bernadette that sort of spoke about the kind of cultural shift required, just embedding a culture that promotes and values this sort of stuff is perhaps part of the challenge, isn't it? Particularly in the context you're talking about there, Emma, where there's the sort of disconnect between high level, yeah, of course, that's fine, and okay, but here on the ground, actually, I don't feel like I've got the time for it. And that's a real tension and a real one, isn't it? But yeah, that's something interesting to think about. A couple of hands, I think, but yeah, Bernadette, you're number one there. Or you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Kaylee was just going to go, I love all of that. I think it's when you get that it's finding a lovely wee team and then showing that. I think that staff case story is so powerful. Do you know what I mean? And really showing the art of the possible. That's something we're looking at with our colleagues in Secure, because we feel we've got such amazing staff there who deal with just really, really challenging situations. And if they're modeling, like we find time to do this in the most limiting of circumstances, then that's ideal to kind of to model. I was going to say, Emma, sorry, Lindsay, I'm just going to make this quick point. NHS staff standards is due to be released soon, and I think it's looking at, I'm not sure how that's going to be articulated, about looking at having more structure around staff time and breaks and things like that, because obviously that's going to be scored against, and funding is going to be tied to that a little, from what I understand. So it'd be really interesting. I don't know if anyone else in the group is aware of how this is going to look, but I think it's kind of looking at how we can harness that to do a bit of a springboard into, we've got these NHS standards. How can we be the best we can be to make sure that we're scoring well on those? I think they'll be really align into that Maslow hierarchy of, are people getting breaks? Do they have access to places to rest, get respite, things like that? But something for us as a group maybe to keep an eye out.
Super. Thanks, Bernadette. Yeah, I don't know about that, but that sounds interesting. Lindsay, yeah, please do come, and thanks, Bill. Yeah. No worries.
Hi, I work with Kaylee at Northumbria, as does Sarah. We've got those three of us from Northumbria on today. I would just wanted to say that I think as a trust, and obviously I'm not au fait with what everyone else is sort of offering, but I guess there will be some similarity between us. You know, we're a large trust, we have lots of community sites, we have a couple of main sort of hubs as well, you know, big hospitals, trauma hospitals. I think what we offer as a package is really robust. You know, we do obviously try and make sure that we cover a lot of sort of, you know, different areas, different staff, different, you know, likes, dislikes, whether it's more holistic, whether it's more physical, whether it's more, you know, going down the meditation, breathwork type of route. And obviously we work very closely with our public health team, and somebody mentioned, you know, step challenges, they sort of support on all of that. And we also work a lot with external you know, organisations and charities. And one of the things that we've done recently is we have network groups, and I'm sure most of the trusts on here do as well. So we have about 11 different network groups. Obviously, staff can join. You know, it's sort of a peer support, but they create their own sort of agendas at their meetings. They will invite external speakers in. It's very interactive. It's great. And obviously, we have one for sort of neurodiverse people. We also have one for people that have any type of disability. And one of the things that we sort of were made aware of, we've got some amazing charities locally in the Northeast, and we have a charity called Smile Through Sport that work with people that have any sort of special educational needs and any sort of disability. So we started communications with them, we met them, they're great, really inspiring people, and they suggested to us that they would come in. You know, we have an amazing repertoire of PTs ourselves within our team, but they have specially trained PTs to deal with people with all different types of disabilities. We have amazingly kitted gyms in our sites as well, amazing stuff, amazing equipment. And they came in and offered sort of bespoke PT sessions for members of staff that felt that one of their biggest barriers was because they had a disability. So we created that time, we brought them in. We initially started with 3 people in a very small cohort, got some great case study feedback, which will obviously, you know, sort of cascade into other staff. So, you know, to show what we're doing and to all the execs above. But now we're in sort of a position where we've got a cohort of about 8. So it's just escalating. It's just more people come forward because they see the amazing results and how it's impacted them in terms of their work, in terms of their, you know, mental health and how they feel about exercise. Because I think you've got to be really careful about being physically active, because that can be so many different things to so many different people. It's not just about like lifting weights in a gym, it's about just walking your dog or, you know, gardening or anything like that. So it's been great. We've got some really good feedback, and we've just started this week with our second cohort. So yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Great, thanks for that, Lindsay. It sounds like, yeah, you're doing some great work in Northumbria by the sounds of it. And it's super to have the chance to hear about that across this group today. So thanks for sharing. Great. Well, so there's, I think what we've probably done in that bit is we've kind of discussed some of the good practice and some of the challenges, I think, haven't we? We've kind of talked a little bit about some of the obstacles and the barriers that people have faced, particularly around the kind of time and opportunity to do it, and how we sort of match something up for a workforce with so many kind of different contexts and needs and so on. I wonder, looking at the time and thinking about the time we've got left, whether anybody has any final comments on this. Otherwise, I might suggest we move on to the next item of the agenda to think, which actually will follow on quite neatly, really, I think, from what we've been talking about here, but to ask a couple of questions around our plans for an intervention in this area. Is there any kind of other questions or comments from what we've just been talking about before I move on to that? For me to do that, I'm gonna take that silence to mean go for it. So yeah, let me just share my slides back then. And so you might remember, or we may have mentioned earlier in these meetings that we are planning for an application for some funding to support a trial to design and an intervention and evaluate that through a trial to try and encourage all the things that we're talking about here. So increase physical activity, get people moving more, and increase physical activity in healthcare staff. And I guess we were sort of interested to hear a bit both about general thoughts from people in the room. There's a lot of expertise in the room, as we're hearing, a lot of things that have been tried and successes or challenges faced already. So the kind of general thoughts about the idea of what we're going to do. We've also got a couple of points that I thought would be interesting just to hear specifically about. So to give a brief bit of context, what we are proposing to do is to design a multi-level intervention to increase physical activity in healthcare workers. By that we mean that there would be some things that would be about targeting individual behaviour change, but also lots of the sorts of things we've been hearing about in this call as well, that target behaviour change on a kind of interpersonal level or organisational level, environmental level, and so on. So the exact nature of what the intervention will look like will ultimately be determined as the project progresses, because we'll be working with staff and NHS staff to get a sense for what would work, what would people want, how would it look. But we do expect it to have these kind of multiple components. So it might be sort of you know, for some of the stuff like access to apps or online resources, where you're sort of doing things a bit like what we've heard about today, setting targets and goals to increase activity. Might be some interpersonal features. There might be things like on the organisational level, like workplace champions, somebody in the team who's sort of really behind this, who can kind of take on a bit of a role of supporting and encouraging colleagues, or trying to get kind of buy-in from senior staff or managers on wards, or at whatever setting that people are in. Must be some environmental changes as well, like shifts to some of the physical space in a way that would kind of encourage a bit more movement. And we're interested to get a sense from people about that, what people think about those ideas, whether you have any kind of experience that suggests yes, that would be great, or that might be quite tricky. Just interested to get a sense from people about what you think about some of those ideas. So a multi-level intervention with some combination of all those sorts of things: individual behaviour change, perhaps some shifts to the office space or the ward layout. Do you think that sort of thing, how feasible would that be in your context, or how feasible or how acceptable do you think it would be to try and encourage workplace champions, somebody who might take on a bit of a motivational role and encouraging others? Interested to get a sense from people. Oh, I can see Emma's got a hand up. Thanks.
Sorry, I've got more to say.
No, great, please do.
I think there's a few things. I think in our trust, we've had a lot of challenges with various champion roles in general, and it's kind of reached the point now where most of our different champion roles, we barely have anyone in them, because I think people have just reached a point where they're so overloaded with their work already. The thought of trying to take on anything else is really challenging, and there's been a lot of pushback about coming to meetings or briefings about different things. So we have 9,000 staff, and I think we're down to like around 20 wellbeing champions, and they, bless them, get so many emails and so many different things, and it's just really hard for them to reach out and support things. And again, with emails, the staff that read their emails are the ones that are already doing all the things that we offer, and I think there's something there about lots of places already have lots of good offers, and it's actually about how do we get the right offer to the right person at the right time. And I think there's something about understanding where people are at in readiness to change. Is it a priority for them, and how do we find the ones that are ready to change and it's a priority, and get them in, plug them into the right thing for them? And then maybe the people that aren't ready to change, why? And are they people that just need the right bit of motivation? What's going to make the change for them? Is it understanding where their current health is at? Is it understanding that physical activity is good for their mental health? Or is it just actually it just feels really impossible and we need to just meet them where they are with really baby steps? So and that might be really specific to my trust as well, but it sounds like lots of people have got a range of things. So sometimes I don't necessarily think it's about something new. I think it's maybe partly how do we capture and measure what is and isn't working, and then meeting people where they are along that curve, and do they need some support to be ready to make a change? Just a thought.
Really, really helpful. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm sure there are things in there that all of us who do or have worked in healthcare will recognise. Yeah, the sort of the champions that actually, yeah, there's the risk with, or the challenge with, is that it's a sort of an extra thing, isn't it? Like you say, to people who are already stretched, and so yeah, that does present a bit of a challenge, and perhaps if that is something at all that maybe it's just something that doesn't happen at all, but if it is, that would be really important to think about how much is being asked of people, what's realistic and what's feasible in terms of taking on anything extra when schedules are often so busy. I thought the point about emails is also quite interesting. Again, I sort of I could actually I sort of think, yeah, I'm sure there's a great deal of truth in that. The people who are sort of clicking into the email about physical activity and how helpful it is for you are probably many of those are the people who already think that and know it, and perhaps doing something along those lines. It's interesting. Thanks for that, Emma. Anybody else? With other thoughts on these sorts of points? There was also the one about accelerometry devices. We would be encouraging people to wear devices to measure physical activity. How interesting to hear about whether others have tried that. Has that been something that people have done, and what people's experience of that was like in the healthcare setting? Whether perhaps there are some roles where you can't wear them on a wrist, for example, or have others had experience here that would be useful to share? Or just have any thoughts about how that might work in the context that you work in? Do you think people would be happy to or able to wear devices in this way? Oh, Charlie, thanks.
Thanks, Joel. Hi. Yeah, no experience, apart from my own, once upon a time wearing a Fitbit. But I think, just as you said it, that thought popped into my head about the feasibility of people wearing something, particularly if we've got the bare below the elbow caveat for clinical staff. I can see a few people nodding. So I think it would have to be something that took that into account. And again, I don't know these devices. A quick internet search tells me that you can apply them to different parts of the body and things like that. But yeah, that would just need to be taken into account. I'm sure you and other people have thought about. But yeah, I think that need to be sort of considered as to what would be acceptable to people as well. So yeah, just a thought there. Thanks.
Super. Yeah, thanks, Charlie. That's helpful. And yes, I believe there are a number of different parts of the body on your thigh or upper arm that I understand bring kind of different pros and cons in terms of what they can do and measure. But yeah, certainly there are other options available. Thanks, Charlie. Kaylee, I can see you've got a hand up as well.
Yeah, I've used these. So I kind of run a exercise referral program. So with exercise prescribed, we get referrals in from staff psychology, staff physio, and occupational health, where I do a program with them where exercise is provided as a form of treatment. So I could go on forever about that project, but we've got a charity kind of bid where we got given some Fitbits, and what I found with a lot of my referrals was they didn't need anything super technical in the gym. They just needed to move more, and we kind of give the Fitbits out and measured their step count. And what a lot of the time it was just like, can we increase that step count in a week by 1,000? And start really small, and usually that was more impactful than the exercise that I was doing in the gym with them. A lot of the time, the prescription wasn't the stuff that I was doing in the gym. It was maybe just going out for a walk with them. And most of the time, if you've got something that is tracking your steps, you are more aware of what you're doing anyway. They really do help with kind of just monitoring what you're doing. And more so what Fitbits do, which I love as well, is they tell you when you've been still for too long. Which is a lot of the time what people do far too much of. Again, that's why midday moves came in, because people are sitting for so long without moving. So somebody might do 10,000 steps in a day, but that's only one dog walk. So they're still not getting that other side of where they're sitting still all day and then kind of move at the end of the day. So yes, in theory they're hitting the marks, but all day they're still, so causing other problems. But we have worked with Fitbits and give them out, and they have really worked. I understand that not everybody can wear them, but a lot of them kind of wear them in a pocket or putting them on their ankle as well, and getting around it that way, or tying them on the laces. A lot of the time they're not as accurate, but they're consistently inaccurate, if that makes sense, so they can still kind of track if they're doing more. Yeah.
Super. Thanks, Kaylee. That's useful. Really interesting and helpful to hear about people's experience in this and people's thoughts. I'm just dropping this down so I can see where we are in time. We've got, yeah, coming towards the end of the time. I will want to reserve a couple of minutes as well to think about kind of future planning. I wonder whether, before I move on to that, does anybody have any other points, or if Kath or Manish, is there anything that you wanted to say about that, the kind of trial element, anything you want to pick up that I haven't captured there? Again, I'll just give a moment or so in case anybody does want to say anything to that.
Can I ask? I think it's been so fascinating. Thank you. I was wondering about wearing a device on your thigh, because that is an option in terms of research. But I wonder what you think. Has anyone done it? But would anyone do it or not? What do you think? Do you think your staff would?
I've had nurses who they can't wear them, but they've worn them on the ankle, and in pockets. So and it's not super accurate, but again, like I was saying before, it's still going to be accurate if you are doing that in a day. I thought that the same Bernadette about Laura Croft there. I'm imagining on the thigh, like a gun on the thigh. But no, they've had them in their pockets and on the ankles, and it's worked.
Yeah, ankle. I was just wondering if anyone would wear it on their thigh. I was just wondering if I would wear it on my thigh, I suppose. Yeah. But that's helpful, thanks.
John, I may have dropped off, but I don't know if you discussed this, because how we were planning to kind of randomize by specialties and whether people thought that was a possibility. So because we won't probably be able to individualize the randomization of whether they get an exercise intervention versus not, but we'll do it by what we call clusters. So in our trust, we would probably like randomize the medical teams to X, and let's say some other team, because they work in very discrete areas, and whether that was possible in your organizations or not, or if there are different sites within your trust. I guess that's the other way that potentially we could do. And I wondered whether people had thoughts about that, because we don't want people to kind of what we call contaminate. So if someone's getting an intervention, that they're not then telling their friends on the same ward or in a different ward, we're doing this trial and we've got all this extra stuff being done to us. They need to have a control group. So I was really interested if anyone's got any comments or thoughts about that. If not, we can move on, Joel. We'll speak to them. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thanks both, and thanks everyone for all the really useful feedback. Great to hear about things that are going on. It's obvious how much good work is happening, and there's lots for us to learn from that, and I guess for all of us on the call to learn from each other about what is and isn't working in the various settings that we're all working in. So we've got a couple of minutes left, and I said at the outset, didn't I, that today is the last. We initially, when kind of convening this network, we talked about 3 meetings over the first, or over a period of about 10 months or so. Today is the third of those 3. But as I said at the top, we're really keen to kind of build this network into something ongoing and sustainable. Like I said at the start, I think really we're still starting only to see the potential of the network. I think we're getting some great sort of shared learning and things is happening already, and it's clear from our perspective that there's lots of potential for this going forward. And so we would hope to keep these meetings going and to keep the network going and to build its use over time and in ways that kind of work for everybody involved. So I guess I wanted to sort of say off the top, a thank you to everybody who's been involved so far, and to emphasise that message that really what we would like to do is to keep this going. From our sense, perhaps we've been meeting, I suppose, about quarterly so far, haven't we? About once every 3 months, and we were wondering whether that perhaps is a good amount. We don't want to keep it regular enough to keep a bit of momentum going, but also recognising the busyness of everybody and not wanting it to become kind of burdensome to attend. So I guess our thinking at this stage is perhaps that we would keep up to another sort of quarterly rotation. We've got the access to the Teams channel that again, I think the use of that can kind of grow with time. But we're interested to hear about your thoughts as well. So if you've got any thoughts about that, about how the meetings are used, what you'd want from them, or how often you think they should be, please by all means drop me an email, or say it now, I suppose, or put something in the chat as well. Or if you'd rather put something into an email to me, that's JGO3, then please do. And in the meantime, what we will do is we will put out some communication soon about some further meetings over the rest of this year and beyond. And we will hope that you've also similarly found these useful and interesting, and that we will see you at future ones of those meetings. So I'll just give a moment in case anybody wants to say anything right now about that, or what your views about how these are used and what you would want from them. Otherwise, I think we're coming towards the end of the meeting for today. Apologies again that it didn't work quite as smoothly as I once thought it would do. I had great visions for this group breakout groups and a really succinct flowing meeting that didn't quite pan out that way, but I think we still got some really useful stuff from it. So thanks to everybody for being here, and yeah, we'll look forward to seeing lots of you at future meetings in the future. All right, super. Thanks everybody.
Well done, Joe.
Well done, Joel. Yeah.
Thank you.